Hi, welcome to the G-String Show. I'm your host, Daly Manson. Marta's not here today, but I'm here to talk to Alix from Alix Apples and the Core.
I don't want to go home. I don't want to leave this.
I'm Alix Adair, also known as Alix Apples, which is my stage name, and I play both as a solo act and with my band Alix Apples and the Core. I tend to do a lot of activist art and activist music. Didn't do that so much early on. The earlier stuff that I've done as a solo artist is a bit more kind of just like new folk, pop folk, that type of deal. But the stuff that I'm working on currently with my band is quite experimental, and the album that we're currently working on is specifically about domestic violence against women. We've also written stuff that's kind of like to do with like LGBTQ plus issues and just other feminist issues in general as well.
What inspires you with your music?
Probably the biggest one is Laura Marling. Anyone that writes in kind of like more modern folk, especially like new folk, tends to like, she's one of the driving forces in that area. But also bits and pieces of kind of like older Brit rock and stuff. So like anything that Damon Albarn does, I adore. Blur is like quite a big influence, I think, in some of the stuff I do with the band. And also like the Gorillaz, I don't know what I would classify them as genre-wise, but that type of kind of like, again, experimental nature that they take is an approach that we take as well. So they're quite a big influence too.
Even when I'm sad, here it doesn't feel as bad for a while. I'm not alone here. Come sun or rain, it's all the same to me. Both day and night feel just as bright when here. I don't want to go. I don't want to leave this place, no, for
Hakdong is a song that I wrote when I was in South Korea in a little park in Seoul called Hakdong Park. It was the last day that we were there. It was hours before we had to leave to the airport, and it was chucking it down with rain at 2 a.m. in this little park. And my friend, like, she decided to go off skateboarding, like, as her last thing to do. And I sat under this little shelter and just wrote this song in like the 2 hours that I was there. So that's quite, that song's got a little special place for me just because it was a proper encapsulation of just that moment in time.
What's the setup of the band?
There's myself, I do most of the songwriting, though sometimes people in the band pitch in. I sing, play ukulele, and occasionally on some things brass. Not done that live yet, but I do play trumpet as well. So that's me. We've got a keyboardist, Sophie. She also plays violin, occasionally clarinet. This is a theme with the band. We kind of like jump between instruments. John's our bassist. I'm trying to bully him into getting his cello out. He doesn't want to because it needs restrung, but I really want a cello, so we'll see if I win that battle. And then there's Kat, who does all of our percussion. She's also quite a good guitarist. So again, depending on the song, people kind of shift about quite a bit.
So what do you think of the Scottish music scene?
It's a quite large community. I feel like if you know one person in the Scottish music scene, you suddenly know 15. I'm originally from Dumfries, so I'm based kind of more near Glasgow now. But the amount of people that I'll bump into here that I know because of through the Dumfries music scene that are now up here and know the same people that I do in like the Glasgow music scene is it's quite a lot. So I do think that we end up like, we're quite a big community that like intersperses amongst ourselves quite well. I do think we are kind of a little bit contained other than that, but it's nice because we do have quite a unique sound, I think, in terms of like, especially folk music. Scottish folk music's got a really unique sound. And also as well, though, if you listen to kind of like Scottish indie, there's a little bit in there that like you can hear. So it's nice because there's like quite an obvious identity to the music we put out, I think.
The sun sweats, struggling along the horizon, gasping harsh breaths, disturbing the sky it lies in till the day's death settles heavy in our lungs. Do I belong among strangers, nodding down to unfamiliar words, smiling numb to all I've heard and not understood? I found more here.
Reading in Skies is a song I wrote throughout a trip. That is essentially the feeling of being somewhere abroad, somewhere that you don't speak the language and that you don't understand the culture necessarily, but you feel like it fits and it feels like it, at that moment you belong there. So it's just kind of encapsulating that feeling, and that one I wrote through multiple days, again, just on the trip, and it kind of like, again, encapsulates that time of my life and that trip.
How did you get into music?
So my dad's a huge music fan. He doesn't play anything, but he's got possibly one of the biggest collections of like CDs and vinyls I've ever seen. We didn't have bookcases we had bookcases in our house, but we didn't have books in them. They're just filled with like CDs and music. And then my mum's always like sang in the choir for like quite a while, but eventually there was a initiative in Dumfries that was the Dumfries Youth Jazz Band. They're sadly not about anymore, but the whole idea there was that if you signed up to play in one of the 4 jazz bands, they were broken up by level, they lent you an instrument out for free. So my first experience playing music was in jazz with trumpet. And that's just because, if you couldn't afford to buy a trumpet, they're expensive things. I got to just like essentially lend one out for like the 5 or so years I was in that band. And then I was always writing music at school and eventually entered some contests. And when I got through to the finals of those contests, I realised I hadn't played to an audience. So my dad ended up taking me to a jamming session that happened at a local pub. Just kind of like in early Monday evenings, and my mum is now the main singer of the band that kind of run that, but at the time it was just me, this like little 16-year-old amongst all these kind of like 30-40-year-olds just going on like, okay Alex, your shot now, go. And I think if I hadn't had like my background in jazz and being used to improvisation, I would have kind of balked at that and like ran away. But as it was kind of like the right moment to kind of just like, right, okay, I'm going. And that was kind of like when I started playing my own music, really, and that was like the first push there.
Have you done any online shows?
I've done a couple I helped out with a Christmas fundraiser for Dundee Women's Aid. That happened, that would have been early December, I think. So I've just been doing like little live shows here and there. I've done a project with Dumfries Music Conference that was essentially brings songwriters together to create music about kind of music in COVID. So we ended up writing stuff that was like about live streaming in COVID. So I've recently had a kind of release with them that is a song that is about live streaming. So very meta. But yeah, so I've done a couple of things here and there. It's an interesting thing to try and do. I've mainly done it as solo because trying to stream a band when you're all in different locations is a nightmare. But yeah, the band have been keeping in touch, and then I've been doing kind of like solo streams here and there.
Thanks for that, Alex. Great having you on. We are going to finish off today's show with a live recording of Alix Apples and the Core with Sweetheart Come.
All these sounds here to drown out my voice, so my words can travel through this noise. But let me say you have made me happy.
for watching the G-String Show. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and you're going to click that like button and also the subscribe button. Don't forget to share it to your friends!